I want to get your ideas on what were the thoughts like of the reading? Like, what did you guys get from it?
It was long and complicated.
It was very long.
That is true. It was long and complicated.
I had to reread multiple sections of it so I could wrap my head around who was who and who came from where. And
yeah.
I still don't remember the names very well.
All right.
Give me a second.
I would say my initial thoughts were that what was his name? Let me pull up their names real quick. That we can use their actual names. Steven. I think that Steven, my first thought is like, wow, he's going to have a really hard time trying to fill this position if he had like a superstar. And then obviously after I saw what they were getting paid, or the average pay, that was like, what, 800,000? Then I'm thinking, all right, so if this guy was considered a superstar, making that kind of money, it's probably going to be really hard to find a replacement. So that was my initial thought.
I agree. At first, I was wondering, like, how hard can it be to pick a market analyst for a stock advising company? And then, as soon as I read, average pay is like $200,000 or $300,000 the first year, and then up to like 700,000 to $1.5 million. Sorry, give me 1 second. I'll be right back.
Yeah, bro.
Hey, Julio, I'm trying to get back to where I was with all the questions. I'm just not finding it.
Are you looking at the assignment page?
Yeah, I'm on lesson 5.
It should be lesson 6, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
That is why.
Yeah. And if you go to the reading discussion instructions.
The instructions?
Let's see here. Sorry, not the reading. The case study activity instructions. You'll see that there's a section for this week's group leader.
Case study activity.
Yeah, all the way at the bottom, you see next week's group leader. Access the group discussion agenda is the last hyperlink. If you click on that, it should take you to what should be discussed.
Honestly, I'm not seeing it.
Are you on the assignment page, the case study activity?
Case study write-up for recruitment of a star instructions.
I believe that you're still on lesson 5, I believe.
No, I'm on lesson 6.
Okay. Okay, here. I'll share my screen. Let me know when you can see it.
Yep. Almost. Kind of.
Okay. See this one here, case study activity instructions?
Yeah.
Okay, if you click on that, and you scroll all the way to the bottom, next week's group leader.
Yep.
And there's the agenda right there. If you open that.
Oh, coolio.
Then there it is.
The agenda. Let it feel. That's the wrong week.
What's that?
That's the wrong week.
Oh, then I guess go to the previous week, and then click on that.
So we
one.
gotta go. Yeah, go to lesson 5, and then we go to case study instructions. I think it is. Go all the way down, and then. Okay. All right. Sounds good.
All right.
All right. So during the reading, we noticed there were a lot of pros and cons from each of the candidate. But for you guys, out of, I think it was the 5, if I'm not mistaken, 5 candidates that questions, but
Hey, Anson, you sound really far away. Just FYI.
let me see. 1 minute.
Yep.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. It just sounds like there's background noise too, but we can
Yeah,
hear you.
there is. All right. So I think it was like out of the 5 candidates that we read about. For you guys, like, what were some of the pros and cons of each of them?
So I would say I think there was 4 candidates that were external, and then if you count Rena as part of it, then she would make the 5. But I think there was the 4 that he was considering to bring on board as permanent hires. The ones that, from my perspective, were the best ones was Seth and Sonia.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Like the pros, Sonia just seemed like she knew what she was doing. She was very driven. Didn't have a lot of support from like the junior analysts because it wasn't that analyst wasn't really dedicated just to her. Same thing with her, the administrator, the secretary, and she just seemed like she had a game plan. She just wanted to have a larger platform to, I guess, to expand, right? To spread her wings a little bit more. The con side about her is that it wasn't really. This might sound wrong, right? It was that she had other family responsibilities, and obviously that doesn't mean that's actually a bad thing, right? But in the context of hiring someone that is meant to travel quite a bit, that could be a negative, right, for her. Even though what she was doing was right because it was for her family. And then Seth, on the other hand, same thing. He was very driven. He was like what they kept mentioning, like a up and coming, right? And his pro was kind of like Sonia's con, right? Sonia couldn't travel that much. He could travel in very short notice, and his con was that he wasn't very clear, I guess, in his communications, and he wasn't a great writer, and that was actually one of Sonia's strengths. So for me, those 2 were the top ones, and then the one all the way at the bottom was Gerald. It seemed like he came from a very competitive environment, and I don't know if that environment made him that way or if that was just the perfect environment for him because that's the way he was. But it sounded like he treated his people really bad.
Was Gerald the first one he interviewed that was rude and showed up late and apologized?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I agree. I put Gerald on the bottom of the pile.
Yeah.
Well, and he kept saying that the people he worked with were terrible. And I mean, even if you don't really like the people you work with, even if they are not really good at their jobs, the way that he even talked about them made it seem more like it was his fault that they were awful, not that they were actually awful. He wasn't like respectful about his team at all when he talked about them in the interview or anything like that.
Yeah. And it's the same thing with a personal relationship, like a friend. If your friend spends all their time talking bad about other people to you, they're talking bad about you to other people. Like, if someone talks that way about their colleagues currently, they join your team, eventually they're going to start talking about their new colleagues that way. I've seen it happen at many places, and it doesn't change. A person that has that habit doesn't change. They're looking for something to complain about, to give them something to talk to people about.
Yeah.
I had a for the most part, is it the left brain or the right brain? The logical, mathematical side of my brain says yes. It's either Sonia or whoever the last guy's name was. Was it Seth?
Seth.
Yeah.
Sonia or Seth would be the best choice. I would pick Seth over Sonia because I've been at places where travel is required frequently, and eventually I left that job because of the travel. And if they're looking to find someone that's going to stay there for 15, 20, 25, 30 years, it's not that having a family is a bad thing, but if she doesn't have a husband at home, or if she doesn't have a prospective husband at home, then it's going to be a huge pain when she gets a phone call on Friday night at 7 p.m. and says, hey, there is an emergency in South America somewhere. I need you on a plane Sunday night, so you're there Monday morning.
Mm-hmm.
She's going to be like, I can't do that. And the company, or her performance for the company, might suffer because of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even if she has a husband, like, it seems like she did put a priority on her family, which is good, but it does mean that a job where traveling is required, like it is in the case study, it's not a good idea for her to search for a job that's going to require constant traveling if she's not willing to travel.
Yeah.
So I feel like
true.
Seth had a better, like, life fit for him kind of thing at the time.
I
Yeah.
agree.
And I with Sonia, I don't remember because I read this was on Monday or Tuesday, but they talked about how she didn't like traveling a lot. But that would be an interesting question: is there a prospective person that can help her? I mean, does she live near her parents? Is it a thing of she really can't leave the kids that long, or is it a thing of she really just doesn't like doing it, but she's willing to if needed? So I think with Sonia, I think it could have been more. The reading could have gone more personally in. I think they just have explained a little bit more concerning like her situation overall.
I came up with an idea for another alternative, though. And
What was that?
This might kind of turn some screws loose in your head, but the older gentleman, what was his name? Peter?
Let's see. His name was David.
David.
So
Yeah.
I had an idea, and this is just kind of off the cuff. What if they hired David for the position, knowing that he wouldn't be there for a long time? It might be a year, it might be 5 years, it might be maybe 10. But David seemed to have a specialty in training new people, younger people, up-and-comers, into knowing how to do what he does very well. And he's been ranked with that baloney named company numerous times. He's been proven in the field for like 30 years, 40 years. So he's extremely good at his job, and he's good at training people to do his job. I would put, what was her name? The
Sonia?
junior.
Sonia?
Yeah.
Oh, Rena?
Rena.
I would have Rena under his wing, being trained with him for however long he's with the company, and give Rena the position when David retired.
So you would hire David, have Rena train, and then when David was ready to retire, just put Rena up?
Yep.
I mean, that's not a bad plan. Especially because he's very experienced, he's well known in the field. He would give her the things that she's currently missing, because most of the problems with her performance right now is that she just hasn't gotten to that point in her learning and training to be able to handle the position.
I think also maybe one thing, and maybe this might be the problem, because right now the problem is that Rena's having to do the job of the upper level position and the lower level positions, because there's no junior person to help her. So if David was to retire and Rena went up, wouldn't that be in the same situation as she's currently in?
It would be similar, but then they would be looking to hire a lower level person. They wouldn't be looking to hire like a rising star department head type thing. Right now they're looking for someone who can fill that high level position and do all of the higher tier stuff. Whereas if she was actually prepared and could just move up, then they'd just be hiring for a kind of secretary, someone to help.
What if they put Sonia as a junior when they move Rena up?
And they could.
They could do that. That would give Rena the support she'd need, and it would give Sonia a higher position than she's currently used to. She wouldn't be over her whole division or whatever, but I'm sure she'd appreciate it a lot more.
And she wouldn't be traveling. Like, hardly.
She wouldn't.
She'd have more resources, and she'd have the family commitments covered. So that would be a good solution if Sonia was interested in the lower level job.
I think that would be the catch, because I think I don't know if Sonia would be interested in the lower level, because it sounds like she had worked really, really hard at the smaller company to get to where she was, so she could be noticed.
Yeah.
But I do like the idea of what was his name, David. Of David coming in to fill the position and training Rena, because Rena, from what it sounded like, people thought that she was very, very knowledgeable, right? That she knew what she was talking about. It just sounded like she wasn't very like assertive, right? When she was, I guess, doing presentations and stuff like that and discussing reports. And that's something that maybe is self-confidence that she didn't have, and maybe working with someone like David, to your point, Brandon, maybe that would give her the confidence that she needs, right? To balance her out.
That's actually a good idea. I guess my worry, because I would have chosen, like, for who I would have hired, for me, I would have kept Rena at the higher level position, and maybe that was a good idea to move Sonia at the lower. The only reason for that mainly is because Rena's worked at the company, and so I remember from, I think it was the reading, talked about how they like people kind of ranking, kind of leveling up in the company instead of bringing the outsiders in, as well as they don't like to have a high turnover rate. The turnover rate is low. So David is good, but because we don't know how long he's willing to work at the company, that could be a higher turnover rate for that position. And that's kind of something that, from my understanding, the corporate doesn't want to see.
Well, and if they did that with Sonia, there is always the idea that she'd move up in the company later. Like with Rena, even if she isn't taking that higher position, she's already been promised her own team. Even if it's a smaller role, it's going to be her own team to lead. So it's not like Sonia taking the job would be just stuck as that kind of assistant forever. She'd have the ability to advance in the company. So she might be more okay with going into it, knowing that there would be that potential in that position, because then she'd have more resources. She'd be able to work higher in that company. And in the company she's in right now, it doesn't sound like she can work any higher even if she tries.
Right. Yeah, it really doesn't sound like if we move Sonia up, that she's going to be able to excel like how she should be able to. But if we had her, just like you said, Samantha, that just sounds like a better plan overall, I guess, from what you said.
I don't know. I feel like Sonia could succeed very well in the position if it wasn't because of the traveling requirement. Because the only negative to Rena is that she's not sticking up for herself, saying, like, talking to Steven and saying, hey, now that I'm here temporarily, I feel like I can do this, not only do it, but do it well. She's not really asking for that position, right? And when someone's really driven and there's an opportunity like that, and you're already filling the position and people are telling you that you're doing a good job filling that position, I would have thought that maybe she would have said, hey, I want to be considered, right? Can I apply for the job officially? And the fact that she didn't do that, to me, it just signals kind of like her motives, or at least her drive, right? That it may not 100% be there to succeed in that type of position, but I don't know.
Yeah, and then Alejandro, you still have like the other. I think earlier you had it like where you could share your screen. You had the other BYU thing still up, right? Or do you at the moment?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to go just on that salary information part? Do you want to click on that? That way we can see it.
Oh, do you know how to share your screen?
I do, but isn't it because you have that, you are the only one that can, right?
No. You can share your screen too. So on the upper left-hand corner, If you click on the screen share, you should be able to share your screen.
All I see is live.
On the upper right-hand corner, but what about on the left-hand side next to, do you see the Google logo?
Yeah.
Right there, there's a little pop-up. It'll be a little pane, and you'll see a little screen, and you can hit that, and it'll share your screen.
Oh, here it is. Boom. All right, so here's the salary information for each of the potential hires. So we have it for David, Gerald, Seth, Sonia, and Rena. So this is their current salary, and here's their salary if they were to be hired. And then the multiplier over Rena's, who's currently holding the position right now. So putting in the salary into play, does that change any of your decisions on who you would hire?
How do I get into this company?
Yeah, exactly. I don't think it does for me. I think I had picked Seth as my top pick. I don't think this changes anything for me. But that's just me.
Wait, Anson, can you talk so your screen pops back up for a second?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So for me, okay, so my position was I was just going to keep Rena, and the reason was because of the turnover. So as far as like the salary is concerned and the multiplier, like where she's currently at, I'm pretty comfortable with where I'm at as far as the new position and the salary she'll be getting. So I don't have any concern hiring someone and then going into corporate and saying, by the way, you know, this is kind of where their salary needs to be at right now. And so, I mean, I'm comfortable with that, but I mean, Samantha, and like, what's your ideas? Any change or?
So I think I still have kind of the same idea. If anything else, this made me even more opposed to hiring David and Gerald.
Yeah, because they're getting a lot.
The only thing that I would also say about Rena is that even if Steven chose her, I think he would have a hard time asserting that she needs that position since she's not asserting herself. And it sounded like every time he talked about his higher ups, they don't see Rena as even a potential replacement. They see her as kind of a temporary thing, and they don't even really like that she got that. Like particularly his one boss, I remember, just didn't even like that she was going to be the temporary person. He thought that someone should be hired right away and she shouldn't even be covering. And so I feel like that's going to make it harder to get Rena hired into that position because there are so many higher ups in the company that already don't think she's worth having in that position. And so even if they were to promote her and do all that, I feel like she's not very confident and she'd clearly have a hard time proving herself to the people who don't even think she deserves the position.
That's true.
That's true. That's a good argument.
This makes you want to hire Rena just because she's the underdog.
For me, honestly, I think the salary thing is kind of, if they're willing to pay a person $1.5 million a year to work for them, this company's obviously got some deep pockets.
Yeah.
Wondering what their influence is in the market or what their capital reach is. But to me, realistically, if they're willing, if they have the option of paying someone $1.5 million a year in salary, then I don't think the salary is really an issue. It's more of pick the right person or combination of persons for the company long term, right? Because David was the highest.
David was the highest, yeah.
He's the older gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably true, but if you think about it, if David's probably only going to be in the position for a couple of years because he's older and probably starting to get burnt out, then you're going to have to replace him also, in a relatively short amount of time.
Right.
Well, I also wish it would have talked more about their like underlings and who would be coming with them, because I know that at one point it said Gerald's people wouldn't be coming with him because, you know, he hated them, they hated him. But the other people never actually it never actually talked about their interviews or if they had certain people coming with them. It kind of just said that he wouldn't. So I kind of wish, even though this case study was long and complicated, that it would have gotten a little more in depth, which is like personally painful, but because if it would have talked about their underlings too, or if it would have just said they wouldn't be bringing underlings, then that would have given me a better basis too.
Yeah, because they said David's would be coming with him, right?
Yeah.
I think so. And that's the other thing I worry about too, because then Rena couldn't have that lower position. She'd have to be in a different team. And then you'd almost be looking at some of the people that came with him replacing him in years. And so I think it would be more important to look at their interviews too at that point, especially if you're potentially thinking he's going to retire in, 5 years. One of them is going to have to replace him in about 5 years.
That's true. And we also don't know the salary of his team as well. That's going to probably push maybe over $2 million. And I don't know that any company would be willing to pay how many people, 5 people for over $2 million.
I think that goes to some of what Brandon was saying. Is I think you have to consider the revenue that resource is generating. So if the revenue that someone in that kind of like superstar role, if they bring in 30, 50, 100, $200 million into the company because of the type of work that they do, because they're selling that information to the people, I think maybe that's where the salary doesn't play too much of a factor. But Samantha, what you were saying, I read some articles where some of the most successful teams, when you're hiring someone, is when they bring their whole team with them, because you're essentially transporting an entire train of thought, and even just like processes and stuff like that, not just with one person, but an entire team, so they can hit the ground running because they're used to each other, they know what they're all about, and it's like a transplant pretty much. So I think that's, to your point, not thinking about it, that would have been really nice to read about more. It's just who was their teams, and were they going to come with them, and if so, what were their strengths, how long had they been working for them, right? Was it only like 6 months or like 5 years or 10 years?
Yeah. No, yeah, I agree. I think with David and then with Sonia, they could have gone like more in depth, more into like their teams, more into their personal life, kind of more into them. So we would have more ground to know of exactly who we're supposed to hire and know essentially just more about them, right? I mean,
yeah,
kind of the gist of it. Yeah.
I also wish he would have asked his like recruiter guy why he didn't suggest Seth. Like, it made this big deal of like, my recruiter person never actually mentioned Seth, and so he kept going through the other lady for Seth. I would have asked the recruiter guy that's working for me why he didn't suggest Seth, if he just like didn't know about him, or if he thought he wouldn't be a good candidate, and why, because that would influence my decision too. If I put a lot of faith in the guy who recruits people for me,
Yeah.
I'd want to know why he didn't suggest him.
That's a good point.
That is a great point. And that kind of leads into the next question. So should Steven give Rena the permanent offer? I think kind of as a consensus here in the group, I think we're kind of leaning towards away that. Or should he hire outside of what we've kind of talked about? Is it better to hire outside the company with, I think, was it David and Seth? Or should he try to maybe even go inside Rena or someone else?
See, and I think if he was going to stick inside the company, it would be Rena. Because, yes, there might be some other people who would potentially have the qualifications and everything to fill that position, but Rena also has the familiarity with her specific set of knowledge kind of thing. She knows the companies that she's working with right now. She knows the job. She knows everything. She's the one who's covering it right now. So if they were going to go internal with it, I would say it would have to be Rena. Just because she knows what she's doing even.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
if we're choosing between the two, what would be the consensus? Going more outside? Would it be safer to go outside?
For me, it would be going outside. Yeah.
I think going outside might be the best choice here, but I'm pretty sure if you go outside, you're going to lose Rena. I think she's going to take offense to doing a position well temporarily and then hiring someone above her.
Yeah, and they kind of did explain to her at the beginning that they might be going outside, but that she would have her own team. So, I mean, there's also that to take in as well. So I think maybe she would take offense, but if she got her own team, then maybe that could help, like, soften down the situation overall. But I think you brought up a really good point about, like, bring outside, that's going to hurt Rena in some way or another. So that was actually a really good point to bring up. So then if we think back at the beginning of the case study with Peter, and so he just resigned and moved to a better company. I think that said it was paying way more. So it kind of explained about how they don't have a high turnover rate. And I mean, they're a really good company. So the fact when someone decides to leave, I mean, word spreads fast from what I read in the case study. So should they have agreed, where Peter could just leave, or should they have let him go? Like where Peter resigned, or should they have let Peter go?
From my experience, once a employee starts to explore other possibilities, and not just explore, but actually has an offer, most of the time they're on their way out already. You could try to keep them there with money, and they may hang around for another 6 months, maybe a year, but it's just a matter of time. There's a reason why they're looking outside the company in the first place. Because if they weren't interested in leaving the company, most likely they would come and talk to their manager and say, "Hey, is there something we can do about my pay? I really like working here. I don't know. The field is more competitive now, and I'd like to be compensated a little bit better, right? Having those type of conversations versus just like, hey, I got a job offer and I accepted it. I'm leaving in 2 weeks, or I'm leaving immediately, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Usually when that happens, it's something that's either not going to change or their opinion on something isn't going to change. I mean, I have a great example of that at work, actually, because my store assistant manager has tried to quit multiple times, and they just keep promoting him and giving him more money. And he was like, they don't even call me with customer complaints anymore, because customers will call corporate and they'll call me, and I'll tell them that I'm doing a good job and hang up on them. So they don't even bother calling me anymore, but they keep giving me raises and they keep giving me promotions. And so, like, he doesn't really like his job, but he's getting paid good for it and he's getting promoted, so he's not leaving yet. But there also is going to be a point where, like, our store manager makes him too mad and then we leave. Or, like, he always says, like, if the two managers under him, including me, actually quit, he'd leave too, because he's like, I don't want to be in this position alone. The only reason I'm staying is because they keep doing this and because I like the people under me, not because I like my job or the people above me. And so, like, even if it takes years, if a person really wants to leave, they're gonna leave eventually. And they're not going to care nearly as much during that time either, because if they have reasons to leave already, then they're not going to be looking to improve their environment. They're going to just be looking to get out of it, or a reason to get out of it.
That's true. It almost...
I've done that.
I think we all have. But it almost reminds me, there was an episode of The Office. I think it was like a Halloween episode where Michael was trying to fire someone. And so Dwight had talked with another company and they had offered him more money. And so Dwight had gone into Michael and had said, hey, this other company is offering way more money. I think I'm going to take it. But in that episode, like, he said he was going to turn it down in loyalty to Dunder Mifflin. Mm-hmm. And so Michael, of course, was mad because he was supposed to fire someone. Yeah. But like in that instance, I think it was kind of what we could learn from Dwight is, like, Dwight, in a way, he was asking for more money in a sense, but we knew from him he obviously was going to stay. Like he had no intentions of leaving because he was trying to become a manager. So I think like they could have with Peter, just because they didn't like the high turnover rate, they could have tried to work out some deal. But I think in Peter's circumstances, of course, Peter was going to leave. I think it varies on the person, right? But with Peter, I mean, of course, he was going to leave from what I got out of the case study, right? So
yeah. Well, and there's a reason Steven decided not to pursue keeping him. I mean, Steven did have that option, but I think even he realized, like, it's a lost cause. There's a reason that he didn't go after him, and I think that was wise. I mean, through this whole process, Steven's been making good decisions. He's been working through certain people and stuff like that, and there were some people that didn't even make it to the interviews and stuff because he looked at their bios and was like, nope. Yeah. So, I mean, it's not like he's doing a bad job trying to find someone to fill this role. He's just trying to be selective about it.
Yeah, and I think that was safe for Steven and for Peter both. I think that really helped the company. So the next question I think we've already answered, which was, should Steven have talked with the recruiter to ask about Seth? And Samantha, you talked about that a lot, about the fact that the main recruiter, the recruiter Steven trusted, didn't ever mention Seth. And another recruiter had to come to Steven and mention Seth, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah. And like, I don't know why Steven never asked about that. If that happened to me and I was Steven, I would have gone to my recruiter guy or like called him up and been like, hey, just curious, did you ever even come across this guy? Was there a reason you didn't suggest? Just because that would have been great to know. I feel like through that whole case study, I was waiting for him to say he called him, and he never did, and it drove me nuts.
The question I had also was the second recruiter, the recruiter who gave Seth's name, was she in the same company as the trusted one, or were they in a completely different, like, did they not know each other kind of? And that's something I didn't really, it was like murky in the case study. I wasn't for sure.
Yeah.
Different company.
They were what?
Different company.
Different company? All right. So yeah, that should have been a question Steven should have asked, but Steven never did, which is strange in a way.
Yeah.
Okay. So then we can think about Peter going to another company versus the company he's at, or the new hires from the company they're at, the company they're coming into. So we can kind of think of them during this question. And the question is, does the performance at one company guarantee high performance at another company?
No.
And so why do you think that?
It has a lot to do with the culture, right? Cultural fit is really big in either the company succeeding or just as an individual succeeding within the company. So a lot of times, if it's just one person that is doing all the work and maybe stepping over other people, and that's why they're successful, and they go to another company, and then there's another company has a different culture that doesn't really allow for that, right? Then those individuals would fail, and there's other people that are successful because of the people that they work with and because of the culture that they have. And when they go somewhere else and that culture is not there, then they might not be able to succeed. That's my 2 cents.
I agree. And then every company has its own set of values, and what makes one company tick well might make another one fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and there's also a learning curve. Anytime you go into a new job, even if it's in a field you're used to working in, you have to learn where that specific office has things. You have to learn how their computer system works. You have to learn every little bit about the new place. And so I think it was the supplemental reading that was suggested in the case study instructions. I read through that a little bit, and it said, like, every time a person moves to a new job, their productivity dips at least a little bit, just because they're moving. And so especially if they hired one of like the super all-stars like Gerald or David, their productivity is bound to dip, at least for the first little bit anyways, because there's that learning curve. There's a new company, there's new coworkers, there's new everything. Anytime you get hired for a new job, you have to learn a whole set of new things over again, even if it's in the same industry.
Yeah, and I think just kind of going off of that, that's really true. kind of going off of what you said, Samantha, like, of course, like the performance when you move is going to drop a little bit because for each company, they're going to be focusing on something that maybe the next company isn't going to focus as much on, but they're going to focus on something a little bit different. And so that new hire is going to have to adjust, going to be able to have to learn. It's going to be a learning process, but they're going to have to learn exactly what their company that they got hired into, what their focus is on, and going to have to achieve and strive. But bringing in what you guys said as well, culture is a really big thing as well. So that's really going to determine the success or the failure of that new employee, especially during that transition time of exactly what they're going to be asking for, I think. But yeah, I mean, that really depends. And then kind of on the last part, they kind of talked about the types of like human capital per se. So like the different, from my understanding, like the different types of employees there are at each company. And I think we've kind of like hit on it that like there's 4 different types. It says there's the general human capital, which encompasses the management skills, like the cultivate the culture, the financial or technological side. Then there's like the strategic human capital, which is expertise gained from experience in situations. The industry human capital, which is the technical, regulatory, or customer knowledge unique to the industry. The relationship human capital, that's the portion of like the manager's effectiveness, like stemming like from the relationships of like your coworkers. And then the company specific human capital, which includes like knowledge and routines and procedures. And so like that was probably really long, but something I learned from that is like you're gonna have to take from your employees at least one of the 5 like types of like human capital, I guess, in your company. You're gonna need someone that's really good like building relationships within it, as well as being very strategic in certain fields, as well as be able to like manage the situation, make sure everything's like done exactly in time. And so all of you brought it up, like of the specific traits that each of the new hires were going to have, as well as the traits that the company already had set in place. And so like, thank you for your comments. Like that made a lot of sense to me. Like coming from the case study, I was kind of confused. And so talking with you guys is always great because then I always learn more than what I already thought I knew in the case study. So yeah. Anyone have any other questions or comments they want to say about this case study in particular?
I gotta say goodbye because I gotta join on my other meeting. So thank you guys.
Yeah. All right, Brian.
Bye.
Bye.
Anson, thanks, Anson.
Yeah.
And then am I leading next week? Am I right on the schedule? Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I will plan on that.
All right. Sounds good.
All right.
All right. Well, have a good night.
You too, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.